r/1000lbsisters. Earl9371 says, gardened much, Chris? No disrespect to Chris, but if you're going to plant a garden, maybe don't plant it right under a tree where evidently the canopy is so thick that so little sunlight reaches the ground that weeds don't even grow there. That ground is all dirt for a reason. Included photo. Hamamono says, there was no actual gardening committed in this scene. It was a producer-written backdrop for the conversation about the coming baby. Jilmonga says, yeah, no garden planted. Plants stuck haphazardly in the ground like you said in shady area where they won't grow. And Amy isn't going to tend to a garden, let's be honest here. Friendly_goose 6023 says, I was thinking the same thing. I don't garden myself, but even I thought the ground looked dry and dusty AF. No sun or rain reaches it. They didn't even really do any gardening. Nothing was actually buried. I guarantee that's the last we see of it. _Ranker says, I was concerned they were going to dig willy-nilly and hit a cable. Friendly_goose 6023 says, did anyone else notice the ride-on lawnmower in the backyard? I laughed when I saw how small the yard was. Seriously, how lazy can you be? They could use the exercise. r/1000lbsisters. Auto moderator says, 1000 sisters S0402 episode discussion thread. After finding out Tam has been robbed, Misty and Amanda visit to break the news in person while Chris pushes ahead toward his surgery goal. Amy has a setback and is rushed to the ER with her sisters by her side. Tammy faces the results of her weigh-in. Wickle_pickles says, I wanna talk about the new ep. Which one is this? I don't wanna get banned for spoilers. Lamo55 says, Antifrizz? Laudamus y'all. Hope by the time we can discuss, the sleuths will be ready with some hot tea for us. Irish Unicorn says, I watched up to episode 4, WHT. Are we talking about episode 2? Karmic Vision says, I attempted to post a spoiler with funny sayings, and it was deleted by mods saying to post it as a comment on the mega thread. I can't seem to find that for this episode 5. LCP54 says, Amy waits until she is literally having her second baby to think about how she will manage to take care of 2 children under 2 while being morbidly obese. Also, she'll let her guard down twice in this episode regarding how much Michael really does to help her. While talking with Chris, she says, well, I have a husband. This is in response to Chris telling her how hard it will be to have 2 kids so close in age. In the hospital, when Michael is kicked out of the hospital, Amy is beside herself that she has to take care of baby Glenn by herself while in the hospital. It's absolutely ridiculous. Her laziness is uncomfortable to watch. She is incapable of doing anything by herself. Lexite for31 says, scheduled post error, didn't properly update. New episode post with correct summary will be posted shortly, and the discussion moved. r/1000lbsisters. Kandai says, question about Amy and Tammy's family. I recently started watching the show, and I'm still on season 1, but I know that their siblings show up in later seasons. I don't understand this, because Amy and Tammy have both said that they only have each other. They've said that their siblings called them dumb, fat and ugly when they were growing up. Michael's sister went to Amy's bachelorette party, but none of Amy and Tammy's other sisters went, and they also missed her wedding, again. It seems strange to have family who seemingly haven't been a part of their lives become a part of their show. Don't get me wrong, I'm excited to see them. Just going by the few clips I've seen, I can tell I'll like them. I was just wondering if this is ever addressed. Many_dark6429 says. Tammy has lived with every sibling in the past and burned bridges. Let's be honest, neither of them are easy. Amy is always the victim in her head. Tammy was just mean. I think they pushed people away. According Net7644 says. I do remember at some point during the show it was said Tammy had lived with everyone BC of her size and everyone has had to take care of her. And that Amy is the only one left that will now be see Tammy is such a pain in the ass. I'm sure some of that plays into it. Tam is probably angry she can't live for free off of others. Did you see how mad she got last season when they got her an electric scooter? BC Michael was starting to struggle pushing her. Imagine being so offended BC you have to use your hand to move yourself around and want someone to physically hurt trying to push 700 pounds. Hildegard Fenson says. Amy and Tammy are full biological siblings. Amanda, Missy and Chris are their half siblings. But seeing their dynamic, they appear to have a hierarchy. That's why Amy caves into their demands, because she's the youngest. RTA 84,293,492 says. People saying they're only after the money, but who cares? They're entertaining. The show got better once Chris and Amanda joined. Silvera says. I think part of it could have been that Tammy burned the bridges and they didn't want to help. Misty has sons that need care, for example, so maybe it was a situation like how Tammy seemed to think Amy would take care of her over her own son. I think we see Chris towards the end of the season 1 and maybe the producers were like, oh he's funny, let's feature him. I do agree they're there for money, but I think the show might not have shared all of the true reasons the siblings weren't around. Curly Mom 7 says. BC the family smells money, so now they all want a piece of the pie and suddenly are very involved. CC 1009 says. They saw dollar signs. r/1000lbsisters. Serious_avocado 4445 says. The therapist is horrible. This is going to be a whole rant. I'm not qualified to speak about the tactics of this style of therapy. I'm in school to become a counselor, so I'm speaking from the basic and limited knowledge I have from school and personal experience from being in therapy for many years with multiple different therapists. We all know Tammy is difficult to work with. If she gets in a bad mood she shuts down and doesn't want to talk. The first meeting that we saw, Tammy was relatively excited and willing to talk. She was expressing her excitement with the changes she made. She was talking about feeling better about herself and all that. It changed when the therapist tried to instantly dig deep by asking about what led her to start drinking. Okay, it's a normal question. However, in my opinion it was asked way too quickly. The first meeting is supposed to be a consolation. The therapist/counselor/physiologist is supposed to get a general feel. Basically ask the general important questions. Do you feel like you're a danger to yourself or others? How do you think? Your current mind state is. What are your goals? Basically build a relationship with the patient. Now if that isn't her style, fine. But when Tammy said I don't want to talk about it the first time, she should not have pushed her. They were only 10 minutes into the visit. When Tammy says I don't want to talk about it, that conversation should have been shut down that moment. The therapist had already built a level of untrustworthiness and made Tammy uncomfortable when speaking to her. Now the second visit is where I really saw how terrible this therapist was. Tammy had two bad things happen before this. She found out she had started to backtrack her weight loss. She found out a dog that she loves had passed away. She was in a bad mood and doesn't feel safe speaking to this therapist. Now let me explain that we do not see everything that happens. We get jump cuts and edited material. We cannot say definitively that Tammy did not greet or speak to the therapist because it skips a lot of the dialogue. With that being said, I will not make assumptions based on what we don't know. It is basic knowledge that if your patient is being difficult, distant, uncooperative, you tell them this: I see that you don't want to talk right now. If you aren't in the mood to share, we can reschedule this appointment for a later time. In the meantime, if you need anything or feel ready to talk, I'm open. This makes the patient feel like they aren't being pressured. It makes them feel seen and important. Instead of taking the steps to making her patient feel comfortable, she talks to her like a child, mocks her, rolls her eyes, and when Tammy had enough and wanted her space, the therapist laughed. She laughed at her patient who is obviously struggling. I know Tammy is a difficult person, but guys, she's struggling with a food addiction which transferred to an alcohol addiction. Addiction is a killer thing. I have been around it all of my life and I know what it does to a person. Someone who should have understood that more than anything was a therapist. Throwaway _ 87624 says, Tammy and Amy saw Drive. Stapleton in person in season 1 and Tammy acted the same way. You should rewatch season 1 because you can see in the in-person therapy sessions that Drive. Stapleton is really good. I agree that maybe she isn't the right fit, but no therapist will be. I'm shocked that any therapist gave Tammy the clearance to get the surgery. Leela87 says, all they need to do is hire a skinny black man as her therapist and she'll have no problem speaking with one. In fact, she'll be the most eager she's ever been. Mohuni says, I actually disagree. I think editing is more at fault here. I work in the field, and when you work with a certain kind of client you have to change your tactics. I also feel like the kind of therapist just isn't a good match for Tammy, and that's fine. But I don't think the therapist is bad. Fixk Madeline says, so you say you aren't qualified to speak on this style, and then also admit that we don't see a lot of what happens during the sessions, but then roast this woman. Julia Sky 1995 says, you say you aren't qualified to speak on it, and then write 5 paragraphs. Maybe stick to your instincts and sit this one out. I'm not sure why every college freshman who took Psych 101 thinks they're qualified to criticize licensed people. It's a TV show. They staged an entire burglary / break-in for crying out loud. Do you really think the 90 seconds we see of Tammy and her therapist on a highly scripted TV show is going to tell you anything? Even if those scenes aren't scripted, we have next to nothing to go off of. They aren't really going to air entire therapy sessions on TV. They show a brief interaction for the viewers and that's it. Intrepid Difference 6 says, I like the therapist. Purple Petal 04 says, I wish people would stop blaming the therapist for doing her job. Tammy has a shitty attitude. I don't feel that her therapy session should be filmed, to be honest, but she needs her therapist to sign off on her surgery. So Tammy needs to suck it up, Buttercup, and get on with it. Apparently she was smart enough to finally realize this, since she ended up getting the surgery she needed. That's all for this video. Was it good? I know not, for I'm a robot. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. This video is the product of an automated process.